The night they crowned every wolf but me, I learned that some doors are locked from the inside. My name is Rena Hollowmere. Most people call me Ren when they call me anything at all. And for 22 years I believed the thing they told me about myself, that I was broken, that I was born wrong, that somewhere in the making of me the moon goddess had simply run out of the thing that makes a wolf a wolf. I believed it because everyone believed it. And when everyone believes a thing about you, it stops feeling like an opinion. It starts feeling like weather, like gravity, like something you were foolish to ever question. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the door. The door to my father's study was oak, dark and heavy, the kind of wood that swallows sound. Alaric Hollowmere sat behind his desk on the night of the ceremony, and he did not look up when I came in. He was signing something. He was always signing something. Papers, treaties, the slow paperwork of a pack that had once been proud. "You're not attending," he said. Just like that. 4 words. He said them the way you'd tell a servant the wine had gone sour. "It's my right," I whispered, and I hated how small my voice came out. I hated that after 22 years I still had a child's voice when it mattered most. "I'm of age. Every unmated wolf is invited. Every single one." "You've waited," he said, "for a wolf that will never come." And there it was. The thing beneath the thing. He finally lifted his eyes and they were cold. Not cruel exactly. Cruel would have been easier. Cruel would have meant he still felt something. No. His eyes were tired and distant. The eyes of a man looking at a stain on the carpet he'd stopped trying to remove. "You're wolfless, Ren. Do you understand what the other packs will say if they see that the Hollowmere line carries a defective daughter? Defective. That word. He'd been using it since my 18th birthday came and went without so much as a shiver under my skin. Since the full moon rose that night and every wolf in the pack lifted their voices to it, and I stood in the circle waiting for the change, waiting, and nothing came. 19. Nothing. 20. The whispers started. 21. The whispers became laughter. 22. 3 months ago, and my father stopped pretending I was a late bloomer and started pretending I wasn't his at all. "The Luna agrees with me," he said, and by that he meant Delphine, my stepmother. "She understands what you refuse to accept. You don't belong at a gathering meant for real wolves. You'll stay in the house, out of sight. That's final." Out of sight. 2 more words to add to my collection. I should have known. I should have known that morning when my stepsister Celeste smiled at me over breakfast. That particular smile sweet as sugar and about as nourishing. She'd been adjusting the diamonds in her hair. Real diamonds. The kind that catch candlelight and throw it back at you like they're proud of themselves. "Don't worry, Ren," she'd said. "I'm sure the goddess has a plan for you. Maybe you can serve the wine tonight. Someone has to pour for the mated pairs." And the pack had laughed. Even the Omegas. Even the lowest of us laughed at me, because that's the thing about being the bottom. Everyone needs someone standing beneath them, and I was the floor. So no, I didn't argue with my father. I'd learned a long time ago that arguing with the powerful is like arguing with a locked door. You can shout all you want. The door doesn't care. I just turned and left. Let me tell you about my mother, because you can't understand the door until you understand her. She was human. A rarity in our world, almost unheard of. And my father, back when he had a heart, chose her over the mate the elders had arranged for him. Scandalized the whole pack. For 5 years I had a father who looked at me like I hung the moon in the sky myself, and then she died. A car accident, they said. Icy road, a bad curve, nothing anyone could have done. I was 7, and I remember standing at her grave in a black dress that itched, holding my father's hand, and I remember thinking, "We'll be okay. He loves me. We'll be okay." We were not okay. Because within 6 months Delphine arrived, a pure-blooded Luna from the Iron Moon pack, all silver hair and colder eyes, and she came with a daughter, Celeste. Golden, perfect Celeste, whose wolf form was so beautiful that visiting alphas wrote poems about it. And my father, drowning in grief, reached for the first hand that offered to pull him out. He didn't notice that the hand was pulling him under. "You understand, Ren," he'd said the night he introduced them, and his own hand was already at Delphine's waist. Already. My mother 6 months in the ground. The pack needs a true Luna, needs strength. What he meant was, your mother was a mistake and I'm correcting it. I was 7. I didn't understand the words. But I understood the way Delphine looked at me, like I was a spill she'd been asked to clean up. And I understood the way Celeste smiled while she took my toys, my room, my mother's room, my father's attention, one piece at a time so slowly that no single theft was worth crying over, until there was nothing left to take. Except me. But here's the thing they never counted on. Here's the thing that saved my life, though I didn't know it yet. A girl who's invisible learns to see. While Celeste was being beautiful and Delphine was being powerful, I was in the corners of that house, quiet as dust, watching. And I noticed things. I noticed how the pack's finances never quite added up back when I still helped my father's accountant before they took even that from me. I noticed how Delphine received letters sealed with the Iron Moon crest and burned them in the fireplace after reading Always Alone, Always at Night. I noticed how Celeste's wolf, gorgeous as it was, never quite met your eyes when she shifted, as if the wolf and the girl weren't fully the same animal. And I noticed the visiting alphas, the way they'd stand on our hills and look at our rivers and our forests with a hunger that had nothing to do with hospitality. I filed all of it away, because knowledge was the only thing I owned that no one could take. They could steal my room, they could steal my name at the dinner table, but they couldn't reach inside my head. 3 days ago the messenger came. He stood in our great hall and his voice carried the weight of old authority. The Alpha King calls a gathering. All territories will send their unmated wolves to the grand mating ceremony, 3 nights hence under the harvest moon, by order of King Kalen Ravencrest himself. And the hall erupted, because this ceremony came once in a decade. Once. Wolves who found their mates there were blessed by the king's own hand, a bond strengthened beyond ordinary measure. It was the chance of a lifetime, and it had fallen into ours. "We'll send our best," my father announced, his hand landing on Celeste's shoulder. And she glowed, already imagining which powerful alpha she'd sink her claws into. And me, God help me, I felt it. That treacherous flutter in my chest. Hope. The thing I should have killed years ago. Because maybe I thought, maybe among hundreds of wolves from across the whole kingdom there might be one, just one, who could look at me and see something other than a defect. Wolf or no wolf. Maybe the goddess hadn't forgotten me after all. And then my father said, "You're not attending." And the hope died quietly the way it always did. And I like to think Celeste heard it through the door and smiled. So now you understand the door. Now you understand the house. Let me tell you about the night I walked out of it. The pack house emptied like a ship going down. From my window, the little one that looks out over the servants' entrance, because of course it does, I watched them leave. Wolves in their finest, laughing, jostling, alive with the particular electricity of wolves who might find their forever tonight. Celeste came out like a queen touring a village of the poor. Her dress caught the moonlight and made her look like something out of a story. And the diamonds in her hair. I want you to know I helped pay for those diamonds. My mother left me an inheritance. My father controls it for my own good, he says, until I turn 25. And every year it shrinks a little. And every year Celeste's closet grows. Delphine adjusted a diamond that didn't need adjusting. Every unmated alpha will fall at your feet, darling. Not just Alpha's mother. Celeste's voice was sharp enough to draw blood. I hear the king himself may attend. And my father came out last, every inch the alpha in his formal black. And he paused, he sniffed the air, and he looked up, right at my window. And for 1 second, 1 single second, I saw something move across his face. Regret. Guilt. The ghost of the father who used to hang the moon for me. And then it was gone. Cold dismissal slid back down over his eyes like a shutter. He turned, he got in the car. And the whole convoy pulled away, red tail lights shrinking down the drive like dying stars until the house went silent. Utterly, completely silent. Even the Omegas had been allowed to go. As servants, but still. Even the old wolves who could barely shift anymore had been invited to witness and bless the bonds. Everyone. Everyone except me. And I stood at that window a long time. And I felt something inside me break. Not my heart. My heart had been breaking in small pieces for 14 years. I was used to that. This was deeper. This was the last stubborn root of hope finally tearing loose from the soil. "You'll never be enough," I whispered to the girl in the dark glass, and she whispered it back. She looked like a ghost, pale from too much time indoors, too much hiding. Gray eyes that used to have a spark in them, and now just looked tired. 22 years old, and haunted. "This is your life now," I told her. "Get used to it." And that's when the ghost girl's eyes flashed. Not with hope. Hope was dead, I told you. With something older, something hotter, something I'd been swallowing down for 14 years. Rage. Rage at Delphine for erasing my mother one photograph, one memory, one room at a time. Rage at Celeste for turning cruelty into an art form. Rage at my father for being too weak to fight for me the way he'd once fought for a human woman. Rage at the goddess herself for making me this way. But most of all, and this is the one that got me on my feet, most of all rage at myself for bowing my head, for taking their scraps and saying thank you, for 22 years of making myself smaller and quieter and less, until I nearly disappeared entirely. "No more," I heard myself say, and I didn't recognize my own voice. No more. I didn't plan it. If I'd planned it, I'd have talked myself out of it, because that's what I did. I talked myself out of everything. But rage doesn't plan. Rage acts. I grabbed my jacket. Not a nice one. I didn't own nice things anymore. And I went down the stairs, skipping the third one because it creaks through the kitchen where I'd eaten alone for a year out the back door that nobody watched. Because who would bother guarding against me? The forest waited. Dark and deep and full of the sounds of normal wolves running with their normal packs under the ceremony moon. And I walked into it anyway. I had no plan, no destination. I just walked. Branches caught my clothes, roots reached up to trip me. A real wolf would have moved through that dark like water. I stumbled and scraped my hands raw, and I did not care. Maybe I'd get lost. Maybe I'd never come back. And the thought that scared me most wasn't dying out there. It was that no one would notice. I walked for what felt like hours, and I finally stopped in a clearing chest, heaving hands bleeding, and I did the only thing left to do. I screamed. No words, just 14 years of it ripping out of my throat into a night that didn't care. And the forest swallowed it whole the way it swallows everything. Indifferent, eternal, vast. I sank down into the moss. My shoulders shook, and that's when I felt it. Not a sound. A feeling. The way the air changes before a storm. The way the world goes still in the half-second before lightning. Every hair on my body stood up, some ancient part of me screaming a warning. Something was here. I scrambled to my feet, and between the trees I saw eyes. Not the gold of a normal wolf. Silver. Pure, cold, metallic silver like moonlight poured into two small mirrors. And they were looking straight at me. "Who's there?" My voice shook, but I held my ground. What else could I do? Run. I couldn't outrun a wolf. Fight. I had nothing to fight with. The eyes came closer, and a shape peeled itself out of the shadows. A wolf. But not like any wolf I had ever seen. It was enormous, easily twice the size of the biggest alpha in my father's pack. Its fur was black as the bottom of a well, but it seemed to shimmer with that same silver light that spilled from its eyes. Power came off it in waves I could feel on my skin, waves that made every instinct in me scream to drop, to bow, to bare my throat to the thing that could kill me. But I'd bowed enough for one lifetime. "I'm not afraid of you," I lied, right to its face. And the wolf tilted its head, studying me, with an intelligence that was far too human. And then it began to shift. I'd seen 100 shifts. They're all the same. A shimmer, a fluid change, and then a person where the wolf had been. This was not that. The air itself seemed to bend. Silver light burst outward, and I threw my arm up to shield my eyes. When I lowered it, a man stood in the clearing. Tall, impossibly tall, with a build that spoke of power barely held in check. Black hair. A face that was somehow both beautiful and hard, all sharp angles and shadows. And those eyes, still silver, still glowing faintly, fixed on me like I was the only thing in the world worth looking at. "You're on my territory," he said, and his voice was low and dark like something poured slow from a bottle. My territory, not pack territory. Pack land belongs to everyone. Only one kind of wolf speaks of the ground as his. The truth of it hit me like cold water. "You're the Alpha King," I whispered. His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Kalen Ravencrest," he said. "And you're Rena Hollowmere. The world tilted. He knew my name. The most powerful wolf in the entire kingdom, and he knew my name. He'd said it like he'd been carrying it around, like it meant something. "How do you—" I started, and stopped, because my brain had simply stopped forming sentences. "I was on my way to my own ceremony," he said, moving closer with a predator's ease. "The one your entire pack is currently attending, the one you should be at." "I wasn't invited," I managed, and something dangerous flickered in those silver eyes. "Explain." It wasn't a question. It was a command laced with a power so heavy my knees actually buckled. I caught myself on a tree, and all that rage from the house came flooding back. "Why should I—" The words came out sharper than I meant. "You're the Alpha King. I'm nobody. Wolfless, defective, an embarrassment. That's what my own Alpha calls me. So why would you care whether I was invited?" Silence fell over the clearing, heavy, dangerous, and somewhere in the back of my head a small, terrified voice said, "You just snapped at the king. The one wolf in the world who could end you with a thought. The one you're supposed to be kneeling to, calling your majesty, covered in dirt and blood in the middle of his forest." My mother would have been horrified, but my mother was dead. And I was so tired, so bone-deep tired of being respectful to people who had never once been respectful to me. Kalen Ravencrest stared at me for a long moment, and then he threw back his head and laughed. It was real, that laugh, deep and genuine, and it cracked his hard face open into something almost warm. "Wolfless," he repeated, still chuckling. "Is that what they told you? It's what I am, bitter now. I never shifted. Not at 18, not at 19, 20, 21, 22. No wolf, no bond, nothing." He came closer, only a few feet now, and I was suddenly uncomfortably aware of his size, his heat, the sheer presence of him. "Tell me something," he said. "Do you know why some wolves don't shift at 18? "Late bloomers," I offered, weakly. "Sometimes." His silver eyes held mine. "Or suppressants." The word hung in the air like a lit match over dry grass. "Those are illegal," I said slowly. "The council banned them 50 years ago. After too many ambitious wolves used them to keep rivals from ever shifting," he finished, "to keep power exactly where they wanted it." He took another step. I could feel the warmth coming off his skin now. "Tell me, Rena, who prepares your food?" My mind raced. "The pack kitchen. But I eat in my room now. Celeste brings it. And I stopped, because the floor was falling out from under me. Celeste, who'd been so sweet about bringing me dinner these past several years. "You shouldn't have to eat with the pack if they're going to be cruel, Ren. I'll bring you a plate." Celeste, who always made sure my food was prepared just so. Who'd insisted starting when I was 17, right before my 18th birthday, that I take special supplements for my health. "No," I whispered. "She wouldn't. Why would she? Why would your stepsister want to keep you powerless?" Kalen's voice went soft and terrible. "You're the Alpha's true-born daughter. Half-human, yes, but true-born. If you shifted, especially if you shifted into something strong, you'd be a threat. To her, to her mother, to everything they've built on the assumption that you're nothing." And the pieces came together with a click I felt in my teeth. The way Celeste always prepared my plate herself. "The supplements Delphine pressed on me for your health, dear, starting the year before I should have changed." The way they both looked almost relieved every birthday when I stayed human, even as they patted my hand and murmured false sympathy. 5 years, I said, and my voice had gone flat, hollow. "Since I was 17. They've been poisoning me for 5 years. Suppressants work best when they're started before the first shift," Kalen said, and his face was carved from ice. "They caught you early. They've been stealing your wolf from you, Rena, one meal at a time." And something inside me cracked all the way open. All those years, all that pain, all that believing I was broken, defective, wrong. I wasn't broken. I was sabotaged. "I'm going to kill them," I heard myself say, very, very calmly. "Good," said the Alpha King, and his smile was all teeth. "But first you're coming with me." "Where?" "To the ceremony." Something glinted in his eyes. Satisfaction. Or vengeance. Hard to say. "Where I intend to ask one simple question in front of every Alpha in my kingdom." He held out his hand. "Where is Rena Hollowmere? And despite everything, Despite the rage and the betrayal and the ground shifting under my feet, I felt my mouth curve into something that probably looked as dangerous as his. "They banned me," I said. "Said I'd be an embarrassment." "Oh, you'll attend this ceremony." He kept his hand out. "And when your alpha has to explain to his king why he locked his own daughter away from a royal summons, we'll see exactly who is embarrassed." I took his hand, and the moment our skin touched, I felt it. A spark. A pulse. Like a current running under my skin. Like recognition. Like no. It couldn't be. I was wolfless. I couldn't feel a mate bond that was the one thing everyone agreed on, the one cruelty I'd made peace with. But Kalen's eyes widened, just slightly. His grip on my hand tightened, and I knew without a word that he'd felt it too. "Well," he said softly, dangerously, "this just became interesting." The drive to the ceremony grounds took hours, but I remember almost none of it. Fragments. Kalen's guards appearing out of the trees like ghosts, an entire pack of them silent and coordinated as a military unit, bowing their heads to their king and then strangely to me. A grizzled captain named Bran Oaks, built like a wall with a face that had clearly been broken and reset more than once, looking at the dirt and blood on me and choosing wisely to say nothing. I remember the sleek black vehicles. I remember Kalen's hand finding mine again in the dark of the back seat, and the way that spark hummed between us, steady now like a wire pulled tight. And I remember what he told me on that drive. The thing that turned my private grief into something larger. "I've been investigating your pack for months," he said. "Financial transfers to the Iron Moon pack, border disputes. Your father always seemed to settle in Iron Moon's favor. Your stepmother came from Iron Moon, did you know that? And Iron Moon has a habit. They marry into a pack, and a few years later that pack's alpha dies of something convenient, and Iron Moon quietly takes control." "You think they're doing that to us?" I said. "To Hollowmere." "I think your stepmother saw an opportunity when your mother died," he said, and his voice was gentle in a way that hurt more than harshness would have. "A grieving alpha, a half-human daughter in the way, rich territory, perfect." "He loved my mother," I said, quietly. "Really loved her, I remember. Love makes people vulnerable, Rena, especially the grieving. She probably arrived as a comfort, a helper. By the time your father surfaced from his grief, she'd already made herself indispensable, including in every decision about you." And I remembered those first terrible months after the accident. My father barely able to stand, and Delphine sweeping in, organizing everything, deciding everything because he was too shattered to decide for himself, including what to do with the strange, quiet, half-human girl he'd stopped knowing how to look at. "Why do you care?" I asked. Suddenly. "You're the king. You have bigger problems than one wolfless girl in one small pack." Kalen was quiet a moment. "My father told me something," he said finally, "the night I took the throne. He said a king who ignores injustice in small places will one day face revolution in large ones. Every pack in my kingdom needs to know that I see them, that I care what happens to the weakest wolf as much as the strongest alpha." He turned those silver eyes on me. "And you are not wolfless, Rena. You're suppressed. There's a difference, because I can smell your wolf. She's there, trapped, screaming to get out. And by the next full moon, if we start now, you're going to meet her." I pressed my hand to my chest, as if I could feel her under there, and maybe for the first time in my life I almost could. We arrived as the ceremony was in full swing, and here is where I have to tell you about the letter, because everything after this turns on it. Before we left the forest, Kalen's Captain Bran had come to him quietly and pressed something into his hand. An old envelope worn soft at the edges, the paper gone yellow with years. "It surfaced in the palace archive," Bran murmured. "Held for delivery, never delivered. Someone buried it." Kalen unfolded it, read it, and his whole face changed. Then without a word he handed it to me, and I saw the handwriting, and the world stopped, because I knew that handwriting. I'd know it anywhere in the dark at the bottom of the ocean 1,000 years from now. I'd seen it on birthday cards and grocery lists and little notes tucked into my lunch when I was small. My mother's handwriting. The letter was addressed to the Alpha King, the one before Kalen, his father, and it was dated 3 weeks before she died. I couldn't read all of it. My eyes wouldn't hold still, but I caught pieces. fragments that will live in my chest until the day I die. I fear for my daughter. I fear for what will happen to her if anything happens to me. There is a woman circling this pack, and she is not what she pretends to be. I have found letters. I have found money moving where it should not. And I have found something in my own food that a human should not be tasting. If you are reading this, then perhaps I was right to be afraid. Protect my Rena. Please. She is stronger than any of them will ever let her be. I looked up at Kalen, and I could barely see him through the tears. The accident, I whispered. The car. The icy road. Rena, he said gently. It wasn't an accident, was it? And the Alpha King of all the territories, the most powerful wolf alive, looked at me with something that was not pity, because I'd have hated pity. It was grief. Shared grief. No, he said, I don't think it was. My mother had known. 15 years ago, my mother had known exactly what was coming for her and for me. She'd tried to warn someone, and her letter had been buried, and she'd been buried, and I'd been left to grow up in the house of the people who did it, being told every day that I was the thing that was wrong. I folded the letter with hands that had gone very steady. Because rage, real rage, the kind that's had 15 years to age in the dark, doesn't shake. It goes quiet. Take me inside, I said, and Kalen Ravencrest, who could have ordered me to wait, who could have handled it all himself and kept me safe in the car, looked at my face and understood. He offered me his arm, and I walked into that ceremony on the arm of the king, covered in dirt, bleeding from the thorns, my mother's letter pressed against my heart, toward the pack that had thrown me away, and the family that had murdered my mother and slowly poisoned me for 5 years, and my father who had looked the other way from all of it. The pavilion was a thing out of a dream. Crystal light hung from ancient oak branches. Hundreds of wolves in their finest, so many alphas in one place that the air itself felt heavy with power. And through it all, cutting clear across the music and the laughter, I heard a voice I would have known in my sleep. Celeste. Holding court in the center of a ring of unmated alphas, radiant in her diamonds, telling a story. And poor Ren actually thought she might attend tonight, she was saying, her clear voice carrying. Can you imagine Father had to explicitly forbid it? Some events are simply for real wolves. And they laughed. That casual, careless, cruel laughter. Because I wasn't supposed to be there to hear it. Because I was supposed to be locked away in the dark, invisible, and forgotten exactly where they'd kept me my whole life. Except I wasn't. Kalen's arm tensed under my hand. A silent question. Ready. And every eye in that shining pavilion began one by one to turn. I saw the exact moment my father spotted me. His face went through it all in the space of a heartbeat. Confusion, recognition, shock, and then unmistakably fear. I saw Delphine's careful mask slip just for an instant into something cold and calculating. I saw Celeste turn mid-laugh and see me standing there beside the Alpha King, and I watched the color drain out of her golden, perfect face until she was white as the diamonds in her hair. And I felt the last of my mother's letter burning against my heart. And I felt something rise up in me that had never been there before. Not smallness, not the urge to hide, certainty. The king's voice rolled out across the pavilion, and it was not loud, but it carried laced with a power that no one in that room could ignore. I apologize for the interruption, he said, but I've encountered something tonight that offends me deeply, and it concerns a member of the Hollowmere pack. He paused, let the silence stretch until it was unbearable. Some of you may recognize the young woman beside me, for those who don't. This is Rena Hollowmere, 22 years old, true-born daughter of your Alpha Alaric, and according to her own pack, his silver eyes swept the crowd, found my father, held him, wolfless. You could have heard a leaf fall. Except, said the king, and his voice cracked across the room like a whip, she is not wolfless at all. And I stepped forward out from the shelter of his arm and lifted my chin and looked out at every wolf who had ever laughed at me. And for the first time in 14 years I did not make myself small, because the door I finally understood had never been locked from the outside, and I had just found the key. The truth, once it's spoken out loud in front of 300 witnesses, cannot be unspoken. That's the thing about the truth. It doesn't care who's powerful. It only cares who's brave. Let me tell you what happened after I stepped forward. The King's captain, Bran Oakes, came up onto the platform holding something small in his gloved hand. A vial. Amber liquid inside, catching the crystal light with an oily shimmer that looked wrong, looked poisonous. "Found in Miss Celeste Hollowmere's personal case," he said, and his voice was flat and professional and somehow worse for it. "Locked. Hidden under her bed. While the young lady was making her entrance, I took the liberty of having it searched, and the pavilion came apart. Not all at once. It started as a murmur, a hiss of breath moving through the crowd, and then it built wolf to wolf, alpha to alpha, until it was a roar. Because this wasn't gossip anymore. This wasn't the pack reject making wild claims. This was evidence held up in the hand of the King's own captain, and every wolf in that room knew exactly what that amber liquid meant. Suppressants. A crime that carried a sentence of exile. Or death. I watched Celeste. I watched the mask I'd known my whole life shatter into 1,000 pieces. "That's not mine," she said. Too fast. "Someone planted it. Ren planted it. She's always—" "Rena has been at my side for the past several hours," Kaelin said, cold as the space between stars. "And my guards do not plant evidence. Would you care to explain how it came to be locked in your case beneath your bed if you didn't put it there yourself?" Her mouth opened, closed. No words came. And that was when Delphine made her mistake. Because Delphine, unlike her daughter, did not panic. Delphine stepped forward with her lunas bearing fully intact, her voice smooth as poured cream. "Your Majesty, my daughter is young, foolish perhaps, but whatever she did it out of concern. Ren has always been so fragile, so prone to imagining slights. We were only ever trying to protect her," Kaelin said. "From what exactly?" And Delphine, so used to controlling every room she'd ever walked into, so certain of her own cleverness, said the thing that damned her. "From the disappointment," she said. "The girl was never going to be strong. We knew it the moment we saw her. Half-human, weak-blooded, just like her mother who couldn't even survive a simple curve in the road." She stopped. But it was too late, because no one had said anything about a road. The letter had been in my pocket. The accident had never been mentioned. Not by Kaelin, not by the captain, not by me. 15 years had passed, and my mother's death was a closed chapter, a car and an icy road, and nothing anyone could have done. And Delphine had just described the exact place my mother died. The pavilion went utterly, terribly silent, and I watched the color drain from Delphine's face as she realized what had come out of her own mouth. I turned to my father. Alaric Hollowmere stood frozen in the crowd, and I watched him do the math. I watched the man who had loved my mother more than his own life run the numbers in real time. A curve in the road, a woman who shouldn't have known the details. 15 years of a wife he'd never quite been able to read. And I watched something break in his face that I don't think ever healed. "You," he whispered, to Delphine. "The accident. You, Alaric. You killed her." His voice cracked down the middle. "You killed Alara." My mother's name. He hadn't spoken it in years. He'd let Delphine bury it the way she buried everything, and now it came out of him like something torn loose. And I stood there on that platform, and I felt 15 years of grief and rage and confusion resolve into a single crystalline point. They hadn't just poisoned me. They'd murdered my mother. And then they'd raised me in the house where they did it and told me every single day that the wrongness was mine. I want to tell you I said something powerful, something that brought the house down. I didn't. I couldn't. My throat had closed. I just looked at Delphine, and I let her see my face, and I let her see that I finally understood everything. And she saw her own death in my eyes, I think. Because she moved. It happened fast. In the chaos, in the roar of 300 wolves turning against the Hollowmere name all at once. Delphine grabbed Celeste's wrist and pulled, and the two of them slipped backward into the surge of bodies, and by the time Bran's guards pushed through the crowd, they were gone. Into the dark. Into the trees. Toward Iron Moon. And I stood in the wreckage of my whole life, and I did not chase them. Because Kaelin's hand was on my back, steady and warm, and his voice was in my ear. "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight you've survived. That's enough. The rest we do together." Together. The word should have frightened me. I'd been alone so long that alone was the only shape I knew how to be. Instead, for the first time in 14 years, it felt like a door opening, I don't remember leaving the pavilion. I remember fragments. The whispers of 300 wolves following us out. The cool night air. And then exhaustion took me like a wave takes a swimmer, and I went under. I woke in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud in a room that belonged in a story. Sunlight. Clean sheets. The smell of lavender. Someone had bathed me while I slept, cleaned and bandaged the cuts on my hands. And a woman sat in a chair by the window. Older silver threading through her dark hair with the kind of face that has seen everything and judged none of it. "You're awake," she said. "I'm Dr. Mira Vale, royal physician, and you, my dear, have been through a war." She was gentle. She checked my eyes, my pulse, listened to my heart with hands that had clearly done this 10,000 times. And then she sat on the edge of the bed and told me the thing I'd been afraid to ask. "You have a wolf," she said. "I want you to hear that first before anything else. You absolutely have a wolf. I can feel her, trapped and furious and very much alive." Something in my chest that had been clenched for years finally slowly let go. "But," she said, and there was always a but. "The suppressants have built up for 5 years. This won't be quick. It'll take weeks to flush the poison out, and it won't be painless. Do you understand me? Renegading your wolf back is going to hurt worse than anything they ever did to you." I looked at this old woman with her kind eyes and her honest mouth. "Everything worth having has cost me," I said. "Why would this be different?" She smiled, sad and proud all at once. "Oh," she said, "you're going to be all right, aren't you, eventually?" The treatments started that afternoon, and they took 3 weeks. And Dr. Vale had not exaggerated a single thing. They were brutal. Injections that burned through my veins like liquid fire. Herbs that left me violently ill for hours. Sessions in a chamber that was supposed to accelerate the purging of the drugs and felt like being slowly turned inside out. Every day I collapsed into that cloud of a bed, feeling like I'd been taken apart and put back together wrong. But every day I felt her more. My wolf, clawing at the chemical cage, getting closer. And every day, Kalen was there. I need you to understand something about him because it's the part I got wrong at first. I thought a king would sweep in, fix everything, and sweep out to go do king things. I thought I'd be a footnote in his day. Instead, he sat with me through the worst of it. He held my hand while I screamed. He carried me back to my room when my legs wouldn't hold me, and when the pain was too much to sleep, he read to me. Old books about wolf history that I pretended to listen to just to have his voice as an anchor when I wanted to drift away entirely. "Why are you doing this?" I asked him one night, hollowed out from a bad session. "You're the king. You have a kingdom. Why are you spending your hours sitting with me?" He looked up from the book. "Because I want to," he said. And I didn't believe him. Of course I didn't. 14 years teaches you that nobody wants you without a reason, without an angle, without something they mean to take. And that's where the trouble started between us. Because I didn't know yet that Kalen had been keeping something from me. For my own good, he'd say later. To protect me, he'd say. Which is exactly what everyone who has ever failed me has said. But I'm getting ahead again. Let me bring you the old woman first. Because she's the one who saved me in the end. Not the king. Her. Her name was Isolde Vane. She arrived at the palace in the 2nd week and she was not what I expected. I'd been told a rebel was coming. A former Luna turned outlaw, someone who lived rough in the wild places and knew things the council would rather stay buried. I pictured someone fierce, young, sharp-edged. Instead, a woman close to 60 walked into my room. Steel gray hair pulled back plain, a face lined by weather and grief and 100 hard winters, and eyes that the moment they landed on me saw straight through to the bone. "So," she said, "you're the girl who walked into the king's forest and told him she wasn't afraid." "I lied," I admitted, and Isolde Vane laughed, a dry, cracked, wonderful sound. "Of course you did," she said. "The brave ones always lie about that part." She sat with me during the treatments after that. Dr. Vale healed my body. Isolde healed something else, something I hadn't known was still bleeding. Because she had a story, and it was almost mine. "I was Luna of a pack once," she told me one gray afternoon while the herbs did their terrible work and I lay curled around the sickness. "Western Ridge, a good pack before Iron Moon got their hooks in it. My mate was the Alpha, a gentleman, too gentle maybe. He started asking questions about why our young wolves were failing to shift, about where the money was going, about the letters his own beta was burning at night. She was quiet a moment. "And then he died," she said. "During a training accident, they told me. A tragedy, they told me. Nobody's fault, they told me." She looked at me, and her eyes were very old and very tired. "The same story they told you about your mother, I'd wager." I couldn't speak. I just reached out and took her hand. "They suppressed my daughter after that," she said. "My Marin, to keep me quiet. If I made trouble, they'd hurt her. So I didn't make trouble. For years I didn't make trouble. I told myself I was protecting her." Her voice went rough. "But you know what I was really doing, Rena? I was teaching her that we don't fight. I was teaching her to bow her head exactly the way somebody taught you to bow yours." "What happened to her?" I asked. "To Marin." "She's still in there," Isolde said. "Still suppressed, still thinks I abandoned her, still thinks I'm the traitor who ran." Her jaw tightened. "So no, I'm not here to be your grandmother child. I'm here because you did the thing I was too frightened to do for 30 years. You stood up, you made the king look, and now God willing that door you kicked open is going to let the rest of us out too." And I understood then that this was bigger than my mother, bigger than me. There were dozens of us, girls and boys and grown men and women scattered across the kingdom, all convinced they were broken, all slowly poisoned by the people who were supposed to love them. And somebody had to go get them. By the end of the 3rd week, the changes came that I couldn't hide anymore. My senses sharpened until the world was almost too loud, too bright, too much. I could hear conversations 3 rooms away. I could smell every separate thing in my food. I could see in the dark like it was merely dusk. And I got strong, frighteningly strong. I crushed a doorknob in my hand without meaning to, shattered a glass just by holding it wrong. And the dreams started. Every night I ran. 4 paws instead of 2 feet. Forest and moonlight and the pure animal joy of speed. And every morning I woke with the phantom weight of fur and claws reaching for something just past the edge of my grasp. "Tonight," Dr. Vale said on the last day of treatment, "the poison's gone. The full moon rises at midnight. Your wolf is going to answer it." My first shift, after 22 years of waiting, of believing it would never come. Tonight I would finally meet her. I was terrified. Kaelin shifted with me in the ceremonial clearing behind the palace under a moon so large and so silver it seemed close enough to touch. His guards ringed us. Isolde watched from the edge, her arms crossed, her face fierce with something like hope. And Kaelin's wolf, that enormous black shape shot through with silver, pressed its great head against my shoulder and huffed, an encouraging sound. I closed my eyes. I reached inside for the presence I'd been feeling for weeks, and there she was. A coil of wild energy ready and waiting and so tired of the cage. "Hello," I thought. And the answer came flooding back. Not words. Emotion. Joy and rage and relief and a determination so fierce it took my breath. She'd been fighting for years, and now finally she was free. The shift began, and the pain. God, the pain. Every bone in my body breaking and remaking itself. Muscle tearing and rebuilding. Skin stretching, fur erupting. My scream turned into a howl somewhere in the middle of it. But underneath the pain was something else. Rightness. The world tilted, changed, sharpened into colors I'd never seen. And I fell forward, except I didn't fall. I landed on 4 paws. And I looked down at them, and they were white. Pure, impossible, moonlit white. I heard the guards break into howls. Celebration. Welcome. And I heard Isolde Vane, that hard old woman who'd seen everything, make a small broken sound like a sob she'd been holding for 30 years. "Look at you," said a voice in my head. Kaelin's voice, but deeper, richer. His wolf. A white wolf. "Do you have any idea how rare you are?" I didn't. I didn't care. My wolf wanted to run, needed to run. And Kaelin's wolf understood and turned and bolted for the trees, and I followed without a single thought, and running on 4 legs was as natural as breathing, and the forest blurred past, and the wind was in my fur, and for the first time in my entire life, I was free. Beautifully, completely free. That should have been the happy ending. The girl gets her wolf. The girl gets the king. The credits roll. Except life doesn't work like that. And I was about to learn how much further this went and how much it was going to cost. Because the next morning Isolde brought people to me. They came out of the wild places at the edge of the royal territory, a ragged band of them, and I understood as soon as I saw their faces. I knew that look. The hunched shoulders, the eyes that flicked to the exits, the way they made themselves small without even knowing they were doing it. Survivors, like me. They'd fled 6 different packs. Some exiled, some run, all of them broken by Iron Moon in one way or another. And they'd come because word had spread. The wolfless girl who wasn't wolfless, the one who stood in front of the king and lived. And they laid it all out for me. Names, places, financial records kept on actual paper because paper can't be hacked. 17 suppressed wolves that they knew of across 6 packs. And they suspected many more. Iron Moon had been doing this for 20 years. Systematically. Suppress a rival bloodline, keep the pack weak, then absorb it when it couldn't fight back. They'd grown from 50 wolves to over 300. An empire built on stolen wolves and murdered mothers. And I looked at all that evidence spread across the table, and I looked at the exhausted, hopeful faces of the people who'd risked everything to bring it, and I made a decision that changed the shape of the rest of my life. "We're going to find them," I said. "All of them. And we're going to bring them home." Kalen didn't like it. We fought about it that first real fight, and it was ugly. "You had your first shift last night," he said. "You have no combat training, no experience. If Iron Moon gets their hands on you, then teach me," I shot back, "or get out of my way. But do not stand there and tell me to sit safe in a palace while wolves like me die in the dark. I've been the one dying in the dark, Kalen. I'm not doing it to someone else." He was quiet a long time. "There's something I haven't told you," he said finally, and my stomach dropped, because I'd heard that sentence before. From my father, from Celeste. It never ever preceded good news. "The letter," he said. "Your mother's letter. It didn't surface by accident. I've had my people searching the archive for months. I found it 3 weeks before I ever walked into that forest." He wouldn't look at me. "I knew, Rena. I knew your mother was murdered before I ever met you. And I chose not to tell you until the moment I thought you could bear it." The room went very still. "You knew," I said. "I was trying to protect you. You decided," I said, and my voice was shaking now, "what I could bear. You, a man I'd known for 3 weeks. You looked at me and decided I was too fragile for the truth about my own mother." I laughed, and it was an awful sound. "Do you know who else decided what I could handle, Kalen? Do you know who else was always protecting me from things I had a right to know? My father. Delphine. Every single person who ever failed me did it while telling me it was for my own good." He flinched. Actually flinched, this king who'd stared down alphas without blinking. "I'm sorry," he said. And he meant it. I could feel that he meant it. "You're right. It was mine to share, not to ration. I've spent my whole life managing people, deciding what they can handle, and I did it to you without thinking. I won't do it again. And here's the things I want you to understand, because it's the thing I had to learn the hard way. Being sorry doesn't erase it. But it can be a beginning if the person means it, if they change. Don't ever hide the truth from me again," I said. "Not to protect me. Not for any reason. If we're going to do this together, then together means I get to know what you know. Even when it's terrible. Especially when it's terrible." "Together," he agreed. "No more rationing. You have my word." It wasn't a clean forgiveness. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was 2 flawed people deciding to keep trying, which I've come to believe is the only kind of love that's actually real. We started with the smallest pack. Rivermouth. The weakest, the most vulnerable, the perfect target for Iron Moon, and the safest place for us to begin. Its alpha was a man named Emrys Hart. 52 years old, gray, threading his brown hair with eyes that looked like they'd been worried for 20 years straight. And when we arrived, he was waiting outside his modest pack house, and he bowed before Kalen could even speak. "I know why you're here," he said before anyone asked. "And I want you to know, I didn't start this. My father did. Iron Moon did. By the time I became alpha, it was already happening, and they had a knife at my family's throat." We went inside, and Emrys Hart told us a version of the story I was beginning to know by heart. 20 years ago, Iron Moon wanted Rivermouth's river, the cleanest water in the region. Emrys's father refused to sell, so Iron Moon arranged a marriage alliance instead. Emrys's sister forced to mate an Iron Moon wolf. She had a son, and when that boy turned 16 and his mother tried to run with him, Iron Moon started suppressing the boy to keep her in line. If she left, they'd kill him. If she told anyone, they'd kill him. So she stayed, and her son turned 18 without shifting. 19, 20. And 2 years ago, Emrys said, his voice breaking, my sister couldn't carry it anymore. She didn't survive her grief. I won't say more than that. It's not mine to tell. He wiped his eyes with the back of a shaking hand. And I inherited the mess. Iron Moon told me keep dosing the boy or they kill him outright and take my whole pack. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to come to your king, Kaelin said, not unkindly, but firm. They have wolves in your palace, Emrys said. Spies. They told me the boy would be dead before you could investigate. He looked at me then, and something like desperate hope came into his ruined face. But then the white wolf exposed Hollowmere, and I thought, maybe finally somebody powerful enough is willing to look. Where is he now? I asked. Your nephew. The kitchen, Emrys said, and shame flooded his voice. Peeling potatoes, mocked by wolves half his worth, because everyone thinks he's wolfless. Take me to him, I said. His name was Oren Hart, 23 years old. And when I walked into that busy kitchen and saw him hunched in the corner, thin, too thin, dark circles under eyes that had learned to look at the floor, chopping vegetables with his shoulders drawn in like he was trying to fold himself out of existence, I stopped breathing for a second. Because I knew that boy. I had been that boy. That was the exact posture I'd perfected over 14 years, the art of taking up as little space as a body possibly can. Oren, Emrys said gently. He looked up, saw his alpha, then saw the king, then saw me, and immediately moved to bow to apologize for his appearance to make himself smaller still. Don't, I said. He froze. Don't do that, I said, and I crossed the kitchen and knelt down so I was level with him, this boy who'd spent his life being looked down on. Don't make yourself smaller. Don't apologize for existing. I know that trick, Oren. I invented that trick, and I'm here to tell you that you can stop. His green eyes filled with confusion and fear, and underneath it, buried so deep he'd probably forgotten it was there, a spark of something he hadn't let himself feel in years. 3 weeks ago, I said, I was exactly where you are. Wolfless, they told me. Broken, they told me. An embarrassment to hide away. I held his gaze. Except I wasn't wolfless. I was poisoned, deliberately, for years. And so are you, Oren. You have a wolf. He's in there right now screaming to get out, and I am going to help you set him free. I promise you. On my mother's grave, I promise you. I didn't cry. Boys like Oren have usually forgotten how. But his hands went still on the knife and he stared at me like I was speaking a language he'd stopped believing existed. A wolf, he whispered. I have a wolf. You have a wolf, I said, and once we get the poison out of you, you're going to meet him. It'll take a few weeks and it'll hurt, but you'll meet him. There were 2 more in Rivermouth. Isolde found them. A young woman named Nadia being suppressed to keep her spying mother loyal to Iron Moon, and a widow named Cora whose mate had died investigating Iron Moon's activities and who'd been suppressed ever since, so she could never challenge the story of how he died. 3 more of us, 3 more stolen wolves. And by sunset all 3 were under Dr. Vale's care. Blood-drawn poison confirmed the long treatment begun. And Nadia's mother, faced with the evidence and offered protection, confessed everything. Names, dates, the whole supply chain of the suppressants. This is bigger than we thought, Kaelin said that night, going through the confession by lamplight. His face was grim. It's not 6 packs, Renna. Based on this, it could be 12, maybe more. Dozens of suppressed wolves, maybe scores. Then we keep going, I said. 1 pack at a time, 1 wolf at a time, until we've found every last one. It's going to make Iron Moon desperate, Isolde warned from the corner. They'll fight back. Hard. Let them, I said. And my white wolf stirred in agreement, and I felt her strength as my own. I'm done being afraid of the ones who hurt the ones who can't hurt back. It's time they learned what happens when the weak stop being weak. But there was something I didn't know yet. Something that would change everything. Because that night, going through Nadia's mother's confession, Bran Oakes went very still. He read 1 page twice, 3 times, and then he brought it to Kaelin and he pointed at a name in the supply chain, a name that had signed off on shipments moving through the eastern trade routes. And the name did not belong to Iron Moon. It belonged to a member of the Royal Council, an elder, a man who sat in Kaelin's own chambers and advised his own throne. The poison hadn't just been flowing through the packs, it had been flowing through the palace. "There's a traitor in my own house," Kalen said, and I'd never heard his voice like that. Cold and quiet and terrible. "The whole time I've been investigating Iron Moon, someone at my own table has been warning them. That's how they always stayed one step ahead. That's how they knew to run." Which meant the enemy wasn't out there in the dark forests of Iron Moon territory. The enemy was already inside, watching us, reporting on us, knowing our every move before we made it. And somewhere out there running toward Iron Moon with murder in her heart was Celeste, my stepsister, who I would soon learn had not fled to hide. She'd fled to enlist. We spent 3 days in Rivermouth securing it, protecting the newly found, setting up ways for Emrys to report any Iron Moon retaliation. I sat with Oren through his first treatment, held his hand while he was violently ill, exactly the way Kalen had held mine. "Does it get easier?" he gasped between bouts of sickness. "No," I said honestly, "but it gets worth it. When you shift, when you meet him, when you feel that freedom for the first time, all of this becomes worth it." "Tell me about it," he begged. "Your first shift. What was it like?" So I told him about the pain and the power, about running under the full moon, about the white fur and the wind, and finally being whole. "That's going to be me," he whispered, wonder cutting clean through his sickness. "One day that's going to be me." "Yes," I promised, "that's going to be you." On our last morning, Emrys gathered his pack. "Iron Moon's grip on us ends today," he told them, and his voice was stronger than I'd heard it. "For 20 years we let fear make our choices. 20 years we let them hurt our own. No more. From this moment, Rivermouth stands with the king and with the white wolf, and against the poison, forever." And the pack lifted their voices in a howl that shook the trees. But as we drove away from Rivermouth territory, I felt the weight of everything still ahead of us. 1 pack down, 3 wolves found, and at least 11 more packs and dozens more wolves, and a traitor in the palace, and Celeste running to Iron Moon, and Iron Moon getting more desperate by the hour. "You're quiet," Kalen said. "I'm thinking about how many we haven't found yet," I said. "How many are still out there, still hurting, still convinced they're broken, not knowing we're coming." "We'll find them," he said, and his hand found mine. "But Rena, Isolde's right. Iron Moon is going to come for you. Not politely, not through the council. They'll come with teeth. You need to be ready." "Then I'll be ready," I said. I was wrong. Because you're never ready. Not really. Not for the moment when the trees fall across the road ahead of you, deliberately cut, and 30 wolves pour out of the dark, and the world you've just begun to rebuild explodes into blood and fire. It happened on the drive back to the palace, 3 miles from the safety of royal territory. One moment comfortable silence, Kalen's hand in mine, the hum of the road, and the next Brand's voice roaring, "Ambush!" as our convoy screeched to a halt and the night came apart at the seams. The second vehicle, the one carrying Isolde and 2 of her people, erupted in flame, and I heard myself scream a name into the smoke and the chaos, and I did the one thing I'd sworn to Kalen I would never do. I opened the door. And I ran into the fire, and I want to tell you I was brave. But brave isn't the right word. Brave is a choice you make with time to think. This was just love moving faster than fear could stop it. The change took me mid-stride. Faster than it had ever come, a few seconds of breaking bone and then 4 white paws hitting the earth. And my wolf and I were one thing now, one purpose, and that purpose was to reach the burning vehicle before the shapes closing in around it finished their work. Isolde. That old woman who'd survived 30 years of grief only to walk back into the fight for my sake. She'd been thrown clear of the blast. She was on her hands and knees in the road, blood streaming down her face, and 2 Iron Moon wolves were stalking toward her with murder in their eyes. And I hit them like a white comet. I want you to understand something. I had my wolf for only a handful of days. A handful of days against wolves who'd been fighting their whole lives. By every measure, I should have died on that road. Except rage is its own kind of training, and I was so tired of watching the people I loved bleed for me. The first wolf never saw me coming. I took him down before he could turn, and I did not let go until he stopped moving. And the taste of it was copper and wrong, and I hated it, but I hated the alternative more. "Behind you," Kalen's voice in my head, frantic through the bond. I spun, but not fast enough. Claws raked across my shoulder, tearing fur and skin, and the pain went white-hot. But my wolf pushed through it. We were hurt. Not down. Never down again. And Bran Oakes's voice cut through my panic, that grizzled old captain fighting 3 wolves at once and still finding breath to coach me. Use your speed. You're smaller, faster. Don't overpower her. Outmaneuver her. So I did. The scarred female lunged, and I let her momentum carry her past me, and I struck her exposed flank, and when she came back at me with murder, my wolf whispered something I didn't know I knew. She'll feint left, then strike right. And she did. And I was already moving right. It was over faster than I can tell it. And then I was searching the chaos for Kalen, and I found him at the center of it all, fighting 5 wolves at once, his black fur matted with blood, his and theirs. 5 against 1. Too many even for a king. I don't remember crossing that road. I remember hitting the group around him like something thrown by God, scattering them, and then we were fighting side by side, and the bond between us let us move like we'd done it 1,000 times. When I went left, he went right. When he struck high, I struck low. 2 flawed people who'd learned to trust each other turned into one deadly thing. And then it was done. And the surviving Iron Moon wolves fled into the dark. And the road was quiet except for the crackle of fire and the ragged sound of the wounded. We'd won. It did not feel like winning, because 3 of ours were dead. And Isolde was down unconscious, that terrible head wound bleeding into the dirt. And in my arms, human again, now gasping through the pain of a torn shoulder, was one of the young wolves we'd rescued from Rivermouth. Cora, the widow, the one who'd lost her mate to Iron Moon. She'd insisted on coming with us. She'd wanted to help find the others, wanted to be useful after 3 years of being nothing. And now she was dying in my arms, and her treatment wasn't even finished, and she'd never gotten to meet her wolf at all. She looked up at me, and she smiled. Even then, even bleeding out on a forest road, she smiled. "I almost made it," she whispered. 3 more weeks. I would have gotten to run. Promise me you'll run for me. Under the moon. Promise." And then she was gone. I held her until Dr. Vale's vehicle screamed to a halt and the healer pulled me away, and I knelt in the road with Cora's blood on my hands, and something in me that had been holding together for 3 weeks finally quietly broke. I had done this. I had walked into her life and told her she could be free, and I had led her onto this road, and now she was dead. She'd waited 3 years for freedom and gotten within 3 weeks of it, and I got her killed before she ever reached it. And I did not know how to hold that. That night, Kalen found me in the bath washing the blood off skin that wouldn't come clean. And I said the thing I'd been afraid to say. "Maybe they were right about me," I whispered. "Maybe I am the thing that ruins everything I touch." And Kalen Ravencrest, king of all the territories, knelt down on that cold bathroom floor and took my face in his hands. "Listen to me," he said. "Cora did not die because of you. She died because of the people who put a bounty on your head. And do you know what you gave her in the days you knew her? You gave her hope. For 3 years she believed she was broken, a poisoned ghost in the house of the people who killed her mate. And she died believing something else. She died believing she was worth saving." His voice cracked. "You didn't ruin her, Renna. You gave her back her name. Don't you dare let them take the meaning out of that too." I cried then, really cried. For Cora and for my mother and for the girl at the window who'd whispered, "You'll never be enough." And Kalen held me through all of it and did not try to fix it and did not tell me to be strong. He just stayed. And in the morning, Isolde woke up, bandaged, furious, alive. And the first thing that old woman did was reach for my hand and say, "Don't you quit on me now, girl. I waited 30 years for someone like you. You do not get to fall apart on year 1. So I didn't quit. Because we learned that night what the ambush had really cost Iron Moon. 2 survivors captured, and one of them talked. And what he said turned my grief into something with a blade. There was a bounty, 1 million now doubled for the White Wolf's head. And it had been placed personally. And the wolf who'd placed it, the one riding at Iron Moon's right hand, hunting me across the kingdom with a hatred that had nothing to do with money, was Celeste. My stepsister hadn't fled to hide. She'd fled to Iron Moon, and Iron Moon had welcomed her, and now she was leading the hunt for me herself. And there was more. There was always more. Because a week later, once his poison was finally flushed and his first shift had come early, brought on by rage, Orin Hart, ran 20 miles in wolf form to reach the palace, and gasped out the thing that started the clock. "They're coming for Rivermouth," he said. "Tonight, 50 wolves, led by Vaughn himself. They're going to kill my uncle and take the pack before anyone can stop them. And there's a bounty on you, Rena doubled again, for whoever brings your head during the battle." He looked at me. "They don't just want to win. They want you dead in front of everyone, to prove the white wolf can bleed." 12 hours. That was what we had. 12 hours to get back to Rivermouth and stand between 50 trained killers and the little pack we'd just set free. We rallied everyone we could. 35 of the king's warriors and Isolde's ragged survivors and Emrys's 40 wolves, half of whom could barely fight, against 50 of Iron Moon's best. "We have something they don't," I said when the numbers looked grim. "They fight for money and fear. We fight for pack, for family, for every wolf who was ever told they were nothing. That's not a small thing. That's the only thing." We reached Rivermouth as the sun went down. Emrys had his pack fortified, the vulnerable ones sheltered in the reinforced cellar. Oren stood beside his uncle, newly shifted, terrified and absolutely unwilling to run. And I took my place at the center of it all, because Isolde had told me something planning this. "White wolves are legend for a reason," she'd said. "You're not just a fighter tonight, you're a symbol. Iron Moon fears you because you're everything they've spent 20 years trying to bury. So let them see you, every wolf on that field, ours and theirs. Let them see the girl who was supposed to be broken standing." They came at full dark, and they came hard. 50 wolves, just as Oren had said, and at their head a massive gray shape that could only be Vaughn, the alpha of Iron Moon. They hit the main gate first, and Kaelin met them with a fury that turned the ground red, and the battle became a thing I don't have clean words for. Blood and moonlight and the screams of wolves, Bran and his warriors holding the western pass, Emrys and his people at the eastern approach, and me, the white wolf, moving through it all like something out of an old story. 10 Iron Moon wolves broke through the line and ran for the pack house, for the cellar, for the vulnerable ones hidden below. And I intercepted them, and they knew me the moment they saw the white fur. "The bounty," one of them howled, "kill the white wolf." And they came at me 10 against 1, and I want to tell you I wasn't afraid. But I was. I was terrified. I just didn't let it stop me, because Oren Hart hit them from the side. His first real fight, clumsy and powerful and burning with everything Iron Moon had stolen from him, and together we tore through them, this boy and I, 2 of the broken ones fighting back to back. "Thank you," he sent through the pack bond when it was done and we stood among the fallen, both of us bleeding, both of us alive. "Thank you," I sent back, "for not being the thing they told you that you were." And then I saw him, the gray shape. Vaughn. He'd broken through Kaelin's line and pinned my king to the earth, and 3 of his personal guards were on Kaelin at once, and Kaelin was hurt, badly hurt, and losing. I ran. 10 more wolves tried to block my path, not to fight, just to hold me back, to keep me from him. And Isolde's voice rose over the battle. "She's not alone." And Isolde and her survivors hit the blockers from behind a band of gray-muzzled outcasts who'd been running and hiding for 30 years and had decided tonight to stop running. I broke through. I hit Vaughn like the wrath of the moon herself, and we tumbled across the battlefield in a tangle of fur and teeth. He was bigger, heavier, stronger, and he'd been fighting since before I was born, but I was faster, and I was done. So completely done with the ones who hurt the ones who couldn't fight back. "You stole their wolves," I snarled through whatever bond exists between fighting animals. "You murdered mothers. For what? For power," he threw back. "The weak deserve to be controlled. That's nature." And that's when it happened. That's when I felt my wolf surge with something I didn't understand and couldn't name, and white light exploded out of me. Not the gold of a mate bond. Silver. Pure, cold, absolute. The blessing of the moon goddess herself declaring her favor on the field for every wolf to see. Vaughn froze. Actually froze. His eyes went wide with a fear that money couldn't buy and power couldn't stop. "A blessed white wolf," he breathed. The old prophecy, I didn't let him finish. My jaws found his throat, and I felt his life pulse beneath my teeth, and one bite would end it. One bite. "Do it," my wolf urged. "He's evil. End him." And I wanted to. God forgive me, I wanted to. But I thought about Cora. I thought about the difference between the justice she deserved and the vengeance my wolf was howling for. And I released his throat, and held him pinned instead. "Yield," I growled. "Call off your wolves and yield, or I end you here." And Vaughn, staring up at me, glowing with a power that terrified him, made a choice. He howled the retreat, and that should have been the end. The gray alpha beaten, the battle won. Except, just before his wolves broke and ran, Vaughn shifted back to human beneath me, bleeding and beaten in the moonlight, and he laughed. "You think I'm the one you want," he said. "You stupid girl. You think I built all this? I'm a soldier. I take orders. I always have." Something cold moved down my spine. "From who?" I said. And Vaughn smiled, blood on his teeth, and said the name that took the ground out from under me. "From your stepmother, girl," he said. "Delphine built every piece of this. 20 years. I just do what she tells me. And what she told me weeks ago was to bring her your head." Delphine. Not Vaughn. Never Vaughn. He was just the sword. Delphine was the hand. My stepmother. The woman who'd married my grieving father. Who'd murdered my mother and buried her letter and raised me in the house of my own poisoning and told me every day that the wrongness was mine. She hadn't stumbled into an opportunity when my mother died. She'd been the architect of all of it, the whole empire of stolen wolves, 20 years of it. And it had started, I understood now, with a human woman who got too curious and a little girl who was in the way. And she was here. Because a shape was moving at the edge of the battlefield past the fleeing Iron Moon wolves, and it was walking toward me. Unhurried. Certain. The way she'd walked into every room of my life. Delphine. In human form, with Celeste at her side, and in Delphine's hand, catching the moonlight, was silver, a blade of pure silver, the one metal that can end a wolf for good. "Hello, Rena," she said, pleasant as a dinner invitation. "You've made such a mess." I shifted back to human. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to face her with my own face, the face of the woman I'd become, instead of the girl she'd tried to erase. "You killed my mother," I said. "Your mother," Delphine said, "was a human who couldn't keep her nose out of pack business. She found the letters. She tasted the poison. She was going to bring the whole thing down before it started." She shrugged, this woman, she actually shrugged. "So I ended her. And then I found her little half-breed daughter had a wolf coming, a strong one, I could smell it even then. And a strong wolf in the wrong hands undoes 20 years of work. So I made sure you never shifted. It was really very simple." "Simple," I repeated. "You should have stayed broken, dear," she said, raising the silver blade. "It would have been so much kinder than this." And she lunged. She was fast. Faster than a human should be, faster than I could shift, and the silver blade came for my heart, and I saw it coming, and I could not move in time. And this was it. This was how the story ended. The white wolf killed by the woman who'd stolen everything, and a body slammed into me from the side. Not to hurt me, to move me, to take my place. And the silver blade meant for my heart buried itself instead in the chest of Alaric Hollowmere, my father. Time stopped. The whole battle, the whole world stopped. He'd come. I didn't even know he was there. Somewhere in the chaos, the man who had looked away from me for 14 years, the weak man, the man who chose them over me every single day, had followed us to that battlefield, and when the blade came for his daughter, he had thrown his body in front of it without a heartbeat's hesitation. He crumpled, and I caught him, and Delphine stumbled back, staring at what she'd done, and even she, even that cold and calculating woman, seemed shocked that the coward had finally stood up. "Rena," my father whispered, blood on his lips, his hand finding mine. "Rena." "Don't talk," I said. "Don't save your strength. Dr. Vale is—" "No time," he said. Listen to me. I have 14 years and I have 1 minute. That's not fair, but it's what I have." His eyes found mine, and they were clearer than I'd seen them since I was 7 years old. "I knew. Some part of me knew about your mother, about you, and I chose not to know it because knowing would have meant fighting, and I was too broken to fight. And I let them do it to you, my little girl. I let them make you believe you were nothing when you were the best thing I ever made." "Papa," I said, a word I hadn't used in 15 years. "You have her eyes," he said. "Your mother's eyes. I couldn't look at you all those years because you had her eyes, and every time I saw them I saw what I'd let happen. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. But it's the truth, and you deserve the truth." His grip tightened. "You were never broken, Rena. Not for one single day. I'm so sorry. I'm so—" And then he was gone. I held my father on that battlefield, and I let myself grieve him for exactly as long as I could afford to, which was not long enough, which is never long enough. And then I stood up, and I turned to Delphine. She was already backing away, because the silver blade was buried in my father's chest, and her hands were empty now, and the white light was rising off my skin again, brighter than before, cold and absolute and terrible. "Do it," my wolf whispered. "She murdered your mother. She poisoned you. She just killed your father in front of you. No one would blame you. End her. And I want you to know how close I came. I want you to know that I stood over the woman who had destroyed my entire family, glowing with a power that could have torn her apart, and every cell in my body screamed for it. And I thought about my father's last word. Sorry. And I thought about what it would cost me on the inside where no one else could see. Because to kill her like that in cold blood would be to let her write the ending of my story the way she'd written all the rest of it. In blood, in cruelty, in her own image. And I made the choice that I believe to this day my mother would have made. The choice that made me her daughter and not Delphine's creature. "No," I said. I shifted. I pinned her jaws at her throat exactly the way I'd held Vaughn, and I did not bite. "You don't get my mercy because you deserve it," I told her. "You don't. You get it because I refuse to let you make me into you. You've spent 20 years turning people into weapons. My father, Vaughn, Celeste, even me you tried, and I'm telling you no. You will not have my soul the way you took my mother's life." I looked up, and Celeste was standing there, frozen, watching her mother pinned beneath the stepsister she'd poisoned for 4 years. And I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Doubt. "Celeste," I said, human again. "She used you too. Do you see it now? Everything you did to me, every plate of poisoned food you carried up to my room, she put you up to it. You were her weapon. You were her daughter, and she made you into a weapon the same as she made everyone else. When they take her away, and they will take her away, you're going to have to live with what she made you do." I held her gaze. "I'm not going to tell you I forgive you. I don't. Maybe someday, but not tonight. Tonight I'm just telling you the truth because your mother never did. You were used, Celeste, and you can choose right now to stop being the thing she made you." And Celeste, golden, perfect Celeste, who'd tormented me for 14 years, looked at her mother and looked at me and did something no one expected. She stepped back, and she put her hands out to Bran Oak's wrists together, surrendering. "I'll testify," she whispered, "against her. Everything. All of it." The council hearing came 2 weeks later. I stood before every alpha in the region and I told my story. The suppressants, the letter, the murder of my mother, the battle. 14 years laid out plain. And Celeste testified as she'd promised, and Vaughn's captured wolves testified, and Isolde testified, and Oren and the surviving families of every wolf Iron Moon had ever poisoned. Even the traitor on the council was named and dragged into the light, and he had no answer for the shipments that bore his signature. By the time we finished, the evidence against Delphine was a mountain that no amount of power could move. "You built an empire on suffering," Elder Aldous said to her, and even he, ancient and hardened, looked at her with something like horror. "You murdered, you poisoned children, you turned your own daughter into an instrument of cruelty. There is no punishment adequate to what you've done." And Delphine, stripped of everything, facing the end of her 20-year reign of quiet terror, lifted her chin and said, "The weak have always been ruled by the strong. I make no apology." "Then hear the judgment of the strong," Kalen said, and his voice filled the chamber. "Delphine of Iron Moon, you are stripped of rank, name, and pack bond. Iron Moon is dissolved. Its innocent members will be placed in packs that will treat them as family, and you will spend the rest of your days imprisoned alone with nothing, which is precisely what you tried to leave to everyone who ever crossed you." She was led away, and she did not scream, and she did not beg. She just walked straight-backed and cold to the last. And I felt no triumph, just a great quiet exhaustion, and beneath it, very far down, the first green shoot of something that might someday become peace. Here is what came after. Because the after matters just as much as the fight, maybe more. The council passed a law. They named it the White Wolf Law, though I asked them not to. Mandatory testing for any wolf who failed to shift. Harsh penalties for suppressants. Protection, real protection for anyone who came forward, and across the kingdom they came forward, emboldened by a story that had spread like wildfire. The girl who was supposed to be broken, who stood up and stood and stood. 47 suppressed wolves in the end. 47 lives reclaimed. Oren became Beta of Rivermouth, strong and certain, his wolf looking out through eyes that no longer searched for the floor. Nadia became a strategist, and Isolde Vane, who'd run and hidden for 30 years, walked into Western Ridge with the king's own authority and freed her daughter Marin at last. And I was there when they saw each other, and there is no word for what passed between them, mother and daughter, across 30 stolen years. I only know I cried, and I wasn't the only one. I opened a place after. A house at the edge of the royal territory for the ones who'd been told they were nothing. The found ones. The broken that were never broken. A place where a person could come and be small and safe until they remembered how to be large. Isolde runs it with me. She says it's the first thing in 60 years that ever felt like enough. And once on a full moon I kept my promise to Cora. I ran under it alone out past the tree line as fast as my white legs would carry me, and I let the wind take her name up into the dark. One run, for the woman who never got hers. And Kaelin, my Kaelin, who kept his word and never again decided what I could bear. Who learned alongside me that love isn't the grand rescue in the forest. It's the 10,000 small choices to stay and to tell the truth and to keep trying even when trying is hard. We stood together under the moonflowers one evening months after all of it, and he fastened a small silver pendant around my neck. A wolf howling at the moon. For the white wolf who changed everything, he said softly. And I thought about the girl at the window, the one who whispered, "You'll never be enough," into the dark glass. I wished I could reach back through time and take her hand. I wished I could tell her. They were wrong, every one of them. They were wrong about you, and one day you're going to know it in your bones. You were never the thing that was broken. You were the thing they were afraid of. I was banned from my alpha's mating ceremony, told I was defective, an embarrassment, a ghost of a girl who should have had the decency to disappear. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that locked door was never locked from the outside. And the moment I understood that, the moment I stopped waiting for someone to open it and reached for the key myself, that's where my real life began. Your worth was never theirs to measure. It was never theirs to give or to take or to poison out of you one quiet meal at a time. It was always, always yours. They just needed you to forget. Don't.